Okay, so I just have to talk to the camera for a second. You guys, we're going to do this in 2 parts. We're not going to do all of the notes. It's probably going to take us a couple days to do this. So we're just going to start off with examples 1 and 2, and then we're going to move to examples 4A and 4B. But we're going to start with 1 and 2, okay? So we're going to talk about piecewise, and we're going to talk about absolute value functions. Those are the 2 functions we're going to talk about today. The greatest integer function, we'll do maybe 1 tomorrow before we take the quiz. The quiz is going to have about 10 questions on it. I'll give you about 30 minutes to do it, 35 minutes, so you know. Okay. Okay, so we're going to talk about piecewise. Piecewise is number 1 and 2A. The reason it's called piecewise, you guys, basically is it's pieces of a line. That's what we're doing. We're doing pieces of a line. So what we're going to do is the first thing we're going to do is we're going to graph the line like it's a line. So when it says f of x equals x plus 2, basically what that means is y equals x plus 2. So again, f of x basic equals x plus 2 basically means x plus 2. So what is our slope? 1. So our m is 1. And what is our y-intercept? How do you write it as an ordered pair? 0, 2. Then the next one is going to be f of x equals y, so we're going f of x equals x, so that basically means y equals x. What is our slope for there? 1. And what is our y-intercept? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to graph these 2 lines. What?
How do you know that?
Because there's no number after the x, then that means that your y-intercept is 0, 0. So because there's a 2, that means that your y-intercept is 0, 2. Since there's nothing over here, your y-intercept is 0.
Why is it 1? Why is it 1?
Because the number in front of x is 1. Since there's no number in front of 1, there's a 1. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to graph the first line. So I'm going to graph that in pink. And it says that b is 2. But if you notice, it has less than, right? See how it says less than 0? So what we're going to do is we're going to put an open circle around 2. Remember, these are pieces of lines. And that means basically we want x to be less than 0. Well, right now at 0, 2, x is less than 0, right? That's 0. But it doesn't include 0. Do you see how it says x is less than 0? Doesn't include 0. So just like when we did inequalities, if it didn't include that number, you would use an open circle. You guys, if we graph the line upwards, that means all of our x values would be greater than 0. Does that make sense? Like if we graphed 1, 3, 1 is greater. We want all of our x's to be less than 0. So we're going to start with this point, and we're going to go down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. So we're only taking this piece of the line where x's are less than 0. So let me say that again. We're only taking this piece of the line because this piece of the line is where all of your x values are less than 0. If we took any part of this line, like if we went up 1 over 1, you guys, then our x value would be 1. That's greater than 0. We can't use that one. Does that make a little bit of sense? We're only taking the piece of the line that satisfies where x is less than 0. Now, right here, we're going to graph this one. Now, see where it says x is greater than or equal to 0. So that means it can include 0. So on our y-intercept, we're going to put 0. We're going to put a closed dot. I know you do. Okay, so now you guys, we're going to graph it. Our slope is 1, and we only want the piece of the line where x is greater than 0. So if I went down 1 over 1, my x's would be less than 0. I made it a dot because it says greater than or equal to, and now I'm going to go up 1 over 1. You guys, it's really important that when you draw your lines, that you actually go through, like you actually go up, you go outside of the graph. Don't just stop in the graph, because remember, a line goes on forever. So we're only taking pieces of the line that satisfy this condition where x is less than 0. That's the pink line. And we're only taking pieces of the second line where x is greater than 0 or equal to 0, and that's the green line. The reason that this is an open circle is because it said less than 0, and this one is a closed circle because it said greater than or equal to. Now, the next thing we have to do is we have to do our domain. So basically, our domain can be what? Its domain would be your x's. To satisfy both of these, what would it be? Our domain could be what?
All.
Yep, all real numbers. I'm going to abbreviate the numbers with the symbol. No, that's not hashtags. That's not all real hashtags. That's all real numbers.
Don't use the hashtag.
Yes, you do. I watch you guys. You might, but there are other people who use hashtags. Okay. What do you think the range is? So if the domain is all real numbers, what do you think the range is?
All real numbers.
You got it. Okay. Now, that's number 1. Number 2. Number 2 is already graphed for us. So what we have to do is we have to determine the equations, and we have to determine what the x's are, okay? So anytime you talk about piecewise functions and you go to graph them, or you're going to write the equation, you're always worried about the domain, okay? The x's, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to look at this line right here. This line, okay? So remember, it's part of a line. So in order to do that, the first thing we're going to have to do, just like we did before, is we're going to have to find the equation of the line. So it looks like it is 1, 3. So we're going to use 1, 3. And then there should be another point, and the other point looks like it is 2. Let's go with 2, 6. I know it's not exact, but I'm sure if we blew it up, we could see it. So if I give you 2 points, what can you find from 2 points? Slope. It's the only thing you can find from 2 points. You have to have your slope. It doesn't matter if you want to put it in point slope form or slope intercept form, you still have to find the slope. So we're going to do m equals 6 minus 3 over 2 minus 1. What is 6 minus 3? 2 minus 1. So our slope is 3. Because we're going to write it, you guys, because we're writing it in an equation, we're going to get it down to 3. If we were just going to graph it, I would have asked you to leave it as 3 over 1. But because we're going to write it in the equation, we're going to write it as a whole number. Okay, so then we have y equals mx plus b. I know m is 3, so I'm going to use one of these points to find my b. Yesterday in the video, I said you could do it either way. You could put it in point slope form, or you could put it in y-intercept form. I used to always put it in point slope form. I loved point slope form, but then one of my kids, when I taught Algebra 2 a couple years ago, they're like, why don't you just do it this way? And I'm like, okay, and I started doing it that way, and I don't know, so now I just do it that way. It's really up to you. So I'm going to use 1 and 3. So I'm just going to replace y with 3. I'm going to write the slope as 3 because m equals 3. And then I'm going to replace x with 1. So my y-intercept is 0. Okay, so my slope would be 3, my b would be 0. So this line would be y equals what? 3x. You could put plus 0. Do you have to put the plus 0? You don't have to put the plus 0, so it's that way. Okay, so that's our first line. This line right here, it's going through the y-axis, and it's a horizontal line. So that means y equals, where is it going through? What point on the y-axis is it going through? So it's going through 2, so y equals 2. Again, it's a horizontal line. Y equals 2. We're just trying to find the lines for right now. We're going to talk about the x's and what those are doing next. And we have one more, and it's this one right there. So what do you think we have to do with that one? The last one, what do you think we have to do? We're going to kind of have to do what we did in 2A, right? I'm sorry, in 2A, what we had to do in the orange, we're going to have to do again. So we're going to have to find 2 ordered pairs. What do you guys think? So that's 2, so we're going to go with -3, -1. And what's the other ordered pair that we're going to go with? Ooh, I like that one right there. 6 what? Yep, -6, 0.